Oh my gosh, here it is. We're going back to the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. Crazy to think that these few acres are millions of people's happy place. They come here from all over the world in the tens of thousands every day for the attractions, the parades, the rides, the craftsmanship, the creativity, the theming, and the details. No first-time visitor to the Magic Kingdom can help but be blown away by the sheer size and scale of this place. But to me, the very best part of the Magic Kingdom is no matter how many times you come, there is always something new to try, to experience, or to see. You got weird things, unusual things, historic things, and look at this. I cannot tell you how many times I have been in the Emporium here on Main Street, USA, and yet an incredible Disney Easter egg out here has escaped me. Now, as you may know, the Main Street windows out here serve sort of as little secret Easter egg credits for the park. You'll find all kinds of names of Imagineers and various people who helped contribute to its construction or to its design, to the magic. And the more into sort of Disney parks history you get, the more enjoyable it is to go down Main Street, USA at any of the Disney parks and start to sort of unravel the mysteries of the names in the windows. But even though I've been here countless times over the last decade or so, and have often found myself wandering around looking at all the various names in the windows, there's one incredible name I must have walked right by dozens of times without ever seeing. Not up in the windows above Main Street, but right down here next to the main entrance to the Emporium. Right next to doors I must have passed through I don't know how many times. And here's the thing, the name doesn't appear just once, but twice on either side of the main entrance doors to the Emporium. The bottom of the windows displays the name of the proprietor, and I don't know if you can read that, but what it says is Osh Popham. Now maybe that name won't jump out at you right away, but for old school Walt Disney era Disney fans, you might remember that as a character name from the film Summer Magic. That was none other than Burl Ives' character's name in that film, and he sang some of the greatest songs in the Disney canon. The Ugly Bug Ball, the song about the 3 squeaky wooden chairs. That was a very early Sherman Brothers production, and Burl Ives sang those songs beautifully. You had some of the greatest film composers of all time. You had Haley Mills, you had Burl Ives, and it was a film very close to Walt Disney's heart. It came out in 1963, so during the heyday of Walt working on those live action movies, or at least having quite a say in them. And if you've never seen it, it's a story of a Boston widow and her children kind of falling on hard times and having to move to a small town in Maine. And that, of course, was the thing Walt Disney loved the most, those little small town stories. He, of course, was born in Chicago and then moved out to Marceline, Missouri. And it was his experience growing up in that sort of turn-of-the-century small town that inspired Main Street, USA. And to explain quickly, Main Street, USA at Disneyland, the original Disneyland, was inspired by Marceline, and Walt, of course, sent all of his artists and Imagineers there, but the town was sort of not really in its glory days anymore, so they ended up basing a lot of Main Street, USA's architecture and styling on Fort Collins, Colorado, the home of an Imagineer named Harper Goff. And then when it came time to build the Florida version of Main Street, USA, for one thing, they knew they wanted to build it on a bigger scale, but for another, rather than basing it on sort of a small railroad town in the western United States, they figured it'd be closer to home for people out here to base it more on an East Coast town of the turn of the last century. And that is why the style here of Main Street, USA in Florida is so much different than it is in California. All of which I discussed, well, a decade ago in my Main Street, USA versus Main Street, USA video. But one thing I did not know is that a major influence when they were putting together the plans for Main Street, USA in Florida was to base some of the look and the feel of it on the town of Beulah, Maine, the fictional town from Summer Magic, because of course, it was actually one of Walt Disney's favorite films. And I have to say, it's one of mine as well. And it's crazy because the evidence for all that is right here, right in front of the doors of the Emporium, where I've passed 1,000 times, and I never noticed the name of Osh Popham right there. So there is a great Magic Kingdom secret, and one that I hope inspires you to watch the film if you've never seen it, It's a really good movie, and kind of one of the rare films you could watch, and if you don't like it, well, then you know your tastes would not have matched Walt. I gotta give a shout out to my friend Becky up in New Hampshire for cluing me in on that little detail here about this place being a little bit based on Beulah, Maine. There actually used to be even more references to summer magic on Main Street, USA here, but sadly, they've gone away now. So again, thanks to Becky for pointing out that the Osh Popham thing is still here. Up until today, it had completely escaped my notice. Another thing about Main Street, USA, you'll notice as you head into the park is look how many U.S. flags there are flying above us. This is sort of an oldie but goodie Magic Kingdom secret. Actually, there are no U.S. flags flying above us. Or at least there aren't supposed to be. When they built the Magic Kingdom, Walt Disney and Roy Disney, and of course the Disney Company back then, being very patriotic and very dedicated to American traditions and values, wanted to make sure they strictly followed the National Flag Code guidelines. So, that is the reason that every night here in town square where the American flag is flying, they have the flag retreat ceremony, and of course if it's raining, they take that thing down. When it's nighttime, it's down. They never let it get torn or fly it if it's dirty. They never let it touch the ground, all that kind of Boy Scout stuff. But they were also so patriotic, they wanted to have little American flags all up and down Main Street. And what the heck are you gonna do? Pull those up and down every night? Have 35 flag ceremonies? Well, apparently there is a loophole in the flag code I never knew about. And what the Walt Disney Company cleverly did is they put up these various flags either missing a star or missing a stripe. And apparently that makes them pennants and not flags, which means they don't have to follow the flag code, which means they don't have to raise or lower those ones to half staff. They don't have to put them away if a little light rain comes through. And most importantly, they can take a little longer between changing the flag so they can get a little bit sun faded or maybe a little ripped around the edges without anyone noticing and without breaking the rules. Like I said, that's an old fact, but a good fact. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if it still holds true today. It must be kind of hard to make pennants without an extra stripe or an extra star. I've never gone and counted each stripe or each star of the flags, but you know what? This one right here on the corner does have a suspicious star pattern on the bottom. Oh my gosh! It's true, it's missing stars. Is it missing stars? Am I crazy? What I was gonna say is it wouldn't surprise me if the modern Disney company sort of, cheated by just going to Walmart or whatever and picking up a few cheaply made flags. Would anyone really notice? Would anyone really care? But it looks like the Walt Disney Company is still following that pennant protocol. The way I've always heard the story is that they alternate between missing, stars or missing stripes. I haven't found one yet missing a stripe. It is hard to count. They're sort of fluttering in the breeze, but that makes for kind of a cool scavenger hunt here on Main Street, USA. And also, I find the whole thing sensible, but weird. Now, continuing with the theme of the Disney Brothers Company being very patriotic and very devoted to America, one of Walt Disney's personal dreams, something he tried to do for more than a decade out at the original Disneyland, always intended it, but never pulled it off, was to build some sort of land or attraction that would be a throwback to the era of the Founding Fathers. He really wanted Disneyland to be educational in that way. And so for years, the plan was to build something called Liberty Street in Disneyland. It would have been just behind Main Street, USA. In fact, they even put up banners, coming soon, Liberty Street. They also wanted to do an Edison Square about Edison and his inventions. But Liberty Street was the main thing. He had to have something to teach kids about the founding of America. Now, sadly, Walt Disney's dream did not come true. The children of California remain ignorant about the Founding Fathers, in terms of Disney parks anyway. But after Walt Disney passed away and they were working on Disney World, his brother Roy made sure that Walt's dream would finally be fulfilled here in the Magic Kingdom, which is why instead of a New Orleans Square here, we get Liberty Square. An entire land, an entire village, as the plaque says, dedicated to the hope for freedom for all. To the courage of the sons and daughters of liberty. To old colonial and Revolutionary War era America. All the cast members in this area are dressed in their colonial finest outfits. You've got a replica of the Liberty Bell out here, a Disney version of the Liberty Tree, the original of which was, of course, up in New England, up in Boston, where they used to nail up propaganda to the trunk and hang traitors to the cause from the branches.
I think Walt would have loved that. Back in his day, they weren't afraid of the hardcore stuff.
There's the Liberty Tree Tavern over there, which is a colonial-themed restaurant.
And of course, the one sort of true attraction, the Hall of Presidents.
Now, some people think this developed out of the whole Mr. Lincoln show at Disneyland.
Great moments with Mr. Lincoln. We have an animatronic President Lincoln who originally debuted at the old 64 World's Fair. No, actually, Walt Disney had this idea long before Mr. Lincoln. He wanted an attraction in Liberty Street
called One Nation Under God, with wax figures of all the presidents. But of course, then he thought, no, they should move around, but the technology wasn't there yet. It was something he always intended to build, never got around to. And of course, when they built Disney World and finally completed Liberty Square instead of Liberty Street,
One Nation Under God became the Hall of Presidents,
where you can still see animatronic versions of every U.S. president to date, from George Washington to Obama and beyond.
Wow, look at this. Looks like a lot of people are interested in the presidents today.
I think I might wait to see the show until it's a little less busy.
Now, this is also an oldie but a goodie here. But when they built Liberty Square, the Imagineers really wanted to go the distance. They wanted to make this as realistic as possible.
Everything from the area lighting to the architecture to even literally the window hinges looking like old leather hinges. The brickwork, the signage, all the handicrafts, and the Christmas store. It all had to smack
of the 18th century, which is why this brown streak is here in the road.
Now, I've told this tale before. I filmed this about 10 years ago, but bear with me because it has a new twist. Look at this brown streak in the road. What does that represent? Well, that represents the era before the flushing toilet
and before garbage collection, where you would take your bedpan or your chamber pot or your trash, your leftover kitchen dinner meal.
That was a weird sentence.
And you would simply chuck it out into the street, where sometimes, usually in the middle of the road, would be a rancid, sickly trickle of water. Hopefully, if you were lucky, it wasn't all clogged up. And waste of all kinds
flowing through the town and hopefully carrying your waste away, but more often than not, just turning it into mud right there in the road.
Colonial America must have smelled wonderful. That's right, this brown streak in the land
represents that very river of sludge, the poopy, rotten waste of all the inhabitants of the town, as it flows all the way down into the rivers of America. Watch out, they're stepping in the poopy water. I got it all over my shoes. Help! Now that brown streak of liquid waste running through the streets replicated here is surely a commitment to authenticity.
Because like I said, there were no restrooms in 18th century America, but what I did not know until recently is the Imagineers apparently took this a step farther.
Not only were there no restrooms in the 18th century, there are no restrooms in Liberty Square.
To get to the nearest public restrooms,
you actually have to take a left and head under that building there,
technically all the way into Adventureland to do your business.
Keeping it legit. No restrooms in Liberty Square, although I think that restroom might have sprung a leak. Whoa! And of course, on the other side of the land, the far side towards the castle, the next big restroom is actually in Fantasyland, and you have to pass under this colonial building to get to it.
Ah, I know what you're thinking, but wait a minute. Aren't there restaurants in Liberty Square? Don't the restaurants have restrooms?
Oh, you got me, huh? Well, yes and no, but hang on. This crowd is Heimbucks. This place is crazy today.
Let's finish that thought tomorrow when it's a little less crowded, hopefully.
Oh, there we go. Maybe you won't be able to tell on camera, but that's about 1,000 times better than it was yesterday.
I had to get a little elbow room. You can actually see the Brown River now. Okay, now where was I? Oh, yes.
No restrooms in Liberty Square, but what about the restaurants, you ask? Like the Columbia Harbor House over here. The Harbor House does have a restroom, but pay attention really quickly. They're doing a little bit of construction on the Harbor House, but you notice that little bridge over there? That is Fantasyland on the other side of that thing. That's going to be important in a second. The restroom in this restaurant is located upstairs in the Harbor House.
Pretty busy in here right now because it's lunchtime, so we're going to sneak up this farther staircase.
And I know it's very difficult to get a sense of direction, but basically we're looking more or less in the same direction we were looking at the outside of the building. Now, that little portion of the building hanging over the sidewalk is just over here. That's the sort of bridge underneath which is Fantasyland. So technically, now that we've passed it, we are technically in Fantasyland.
And lo and behold,
Wouldn't you know it, but that's where the restrooms are. Thus, these restrooms are not in Liberty Square. Those restrooms are technically in Fantasyland. Dude, that is crazy. This is one of those like sort of urban legends, little secrets of Disney World that I always thought might be exaggerated or kind of made up. Just because there's sort of no main big restroom in Liberty Square. I had heard the part many times about how the restaurant bathrooms were so far back they technically weren't in Liberty Square anymore. And I never really bothered looking into it until yesterday. And it's true. Look at this. See what I'm saying? We are now in Fantasyland, where, by the way, the main sort of outdoor restroom is. Not that you go to the bathroom outdoors, but you know, it's one for the general walk-in public. So if I accidentally say outdoor restroom, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people going outside. Those are different parks. All right, now, just to be thorough, what about the other side of Liberty Square? What about the Liberty Tree Tavern? Well, unfortunately, that's where this sort of breaks down. Because inside the Liberty Tree Tavern, upstairs, where you can eat your delicious Thanksgiving-style meal if you want, they do, in fact, have a restroom. And unfortunately, it's right above the lobby. It's right back there, up those stairs, sort of in the front of the building. And no matter what you do to try to slice and dice it from like an aerial map or anything, the restroom's right up there. Put them firmly within the boundaries of Liberty Square. So, that's sort of a myth busted. Or is it? Believe it or not, this whole thing is actually a very contested issue. If you start to look it up, you'll find all kinds of people arguing that if you come back here behind the Liberty Tree Tavern, where the restrooms actually would be against the back of some of those walls up there, somewhere up there, you'll find people saying, well, technically this area is the hub. This area isn't really the hub. I've got to say, this area is still part of Liberty Square. Or you'll find people that firmly believe that the restrooms are somehow so close to the back of Club 33 and the Skipper Canteen, and they're part of Adventureland. But no, I'm afraid those restrooms are, in fact, in Liberty Square, technically. To be honest with you, although the Imagineers are clever, although they do include all kinds of cool historical Easter eggs all over the park, I've got a feeling this is one of those things that just sort of happened to turn out that way. And here's the reason. The entire premise is flawed. It's true that there were no flushing toilets back in the 1770s colonial America, but the whole idea that there were no bathrooms at all, that's just not true. People did use chamber pots and bedpans and things like that at night when you were in bed, and probably also when you really had to go and you couldn't get outside fast enough. But it's not like people back then just went to the bathroom inside every time. You ever heard of a little thing called an outhouse? Or back then they would have called it a privy? These people may have been technologically less sophisticated than us, but they still knew that going to the bathroom was pretty gross. Actually, last time I was in Philadelphia, I was walking around and noticed a little plaque on the ground for Benjamin Franklin's privy pit. Apparently the pit is still there, and they did some archaeology in it. Weird. However, it's true that houses weren't built with indoor dedicated restrooms. Most people did have to use the chamber pot or the bedpan at some time or another, and they did throw their trash and their other waste out into the streets. So, the Brown Poo River is a solid Disney fact, and one very much rooted in history. And yes, there are no major public restrooms located here in Liberty Square, but technically there are some in Liberty Square, in the Liberty Tree Tavern, which means that old Disney myth of the bathrooms all being built so far back that they're not in the lands, well, that's busted. And like I said, the whole premise is kind of flawed. They could have built a restroom out here in Liberty Square and just made it look like a row of outhouses from the outside or something, or made the entrances look like you were going through an outhouse and still have been somewhat historically accurate. So I kind of feel like they just put the restrooms where they ended up putting the restrooms because of plumbing, and then later somebody noticed, and the tour guides and stuff were probably, well, that was on purpose. There were no restrooms back in the day. You see what I mean? I kind of suspect it's one of those things, like the Golden Spike at Disneyland, which was just a surveyor's mark to line up the castle, which over time sort of became a legend, like, oh, that's the center of the park, the direct center of the park. They commemorated it with a golden spike in the ground. I mean, before the internet connected everybody to each other and to the archivists that have access to the Disney archives and things like that,
these things would often happen. These rumors would start, tour guides would repeat them. If they were logical and they sort of made sense, you know, they'd get repeated and repeated. And the big thing is, in the early days of the internet, they would spread like wildfire all over the earliest Disney websites, and then of course into some of the Disney fact and tips books. But like I say, this one is still very contested. There are people still arguing the case online. I personally think, well, there is a restroom in Liberty Square technically, and maybe it was the case that the Imagineers intentionally didn't put any of the big public restrooms into Liberty Square for some sort of historical reason. You know what? At the end of the day, these sort of Disney myths, these urban legends about the park, these sort of facts are kind of fun, aren't they? They're fun to explore, to think about, they're fun to debunk, they're fun to believe, and at the end of the day, it's all in good fun, just like the parks themselves. Sorry if I just destroyed one of your cherished myths, but I'll give you a weird thing to make up for it. Over here at number 24, they've put their haunted doll in the window to keep an eye on the people at the restaurant. You ever felt like someone's watching you when you sit over here?
Well, somebody is.
Or rather, something is. Weird.
All right, how about a simpler one? One that is not fake or exaggerated or even argued about, but a solid little Disney World secret, a Magic Kingdom secret that's also an oldie but a goodie.
Back here in Fantasyland, just under 2 weeks after opening day back in 1971, an attraction opened that was a beloved favorite of the early Magic Kingdom park goers.
Much like the original Disneyland in California, added a submarine voyage to their Tomorrowland section of the park, which was very futuristic back then and very realistic. A cool submarine voyage, you know, a journey through liquid space. Back here in Fantasyland at the Magic Kingdom,
they added their own undersea journey to the park.
20,000 leagues under the sea. Basically, it was a more elaborate version of the Disneyland submarine voyage. Only this time, the submarines used that incredible Harper Goff design from the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea film, and it was narrated by Captain Nemo. Today, that space is filled by the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. In fact, that footage that you just saw by Mike and Sherry Redmond from 1989, sent to me by their son Tim, would have been shot from almost this exact position. So as you can see, there was a giant submarine lagoon over here, just like in Disneyland. The submarines would disappear under some waterfalls into a show building where most of the attraction was kept. Unfortunately, it closed in 1994, almost exactly 30 years ago, which is, geez, that's crazy.
1994 was 30 years ago? That means if they made Back to the Future today, Marty would be going back to 1994? Great Scott! Anyway, after that, for a few years, the lagoon sat empty with just one of the submarines hanging out in there as a prop. Then it became Ariel's Grotto and Pooh's playful spot before finally becoming the epic and very popular, still somewhat new attraction, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. In what was it, 2014? It's been 10 years? What the heck? The Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was part of an even bigger Fantasyland expansion. A giant upgrade to the park, including Enchanted Tales with Belle, the Be Our Guest restaurant, obviously the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ride, as I just mentioned, Gaston's Tavern, the Village Gifts, Maurice's Popping Machine, the Storybook Circus with all of its attractions. That's what replaced the Disney World version of Mickey's Toontown. An updated version of Ariel's Grotto, the meet and greet, which, as I mentioned, originally stood right on the site of the submarine lagoon after it closed. And maybe best of all, for those who still wish to go under the sea. Under the sea, the journey of the Little Mermaid, the new Little Mermaid ride. If you've ever been to California, it's pretty much the carbon copy, the identical twin of the one in California Adventure over there. Well, in the standby entrance of the line, which may or may not take you a while to get to depending on the crowds, not only will you find this wonderful lagoon where they, according to legend, poured in water from the original 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea lagoon. And I only say according to legend because let's face it, we have no idea what was in those bottles. But back over here in this back area of the lagoon, and you can see this best if you stand sort of over in that shipwreck area, is a hidden Nautilus. It is incredibly hard to spot if you don't know right where to look. You might have to angle yourself in different ways. But it's down there all right. Almost easiest to see if you come stand right next to this giant light mast next to the shipwreck. Look at that down there. Do you see it? The Nautilus. Now that is a cool little Disney World secret, little Magic Kingdom secret, which is a decade old now, so now officially an oldie, but still a goodie. And of course, absolutely rock solid. A rock solid fact, if you will. Haha, pardon the pun. Now that is cool, awesome. Anyway, apparently the creatives and the Imagineers working here on the Fantasyland expansion were all big Nautilus fans, because this isn't the only hidden Nautilus in the Fantasyland expansion. Although this is the only one sitting right where the show building used to sit, right where the ride itself used to sit. But for the other, we're gonna have to go past this line, over the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train Mountain, over to the other side of the 20,000 Leagues Lagoon, over to the entrance of the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Now this attraction opened in 1999 and they built the Winnie the Pooh tree, his little home right here where he lives under the name of Sanders, right out in front. And because they still hadn't finished whatever they were going to build across the street where the old 20,000 Leagues Lagoon was, they decided to include another epic hidden Nautilus right in here, right inside and underneath, kind of up inside of one of the doorways here. Actually, not the front one, but the one you can get to around the side. It's right in above the curved doorway. Inside of Pooh's house, where you see we can't go today, it's roped off. A hidden Nautilus carved into the beam, or well, naturally grown into the beam, right above the right side of that doorway. Ooh, good thing I have long arms. Ooh, that has to be one of the most epic secrets of Walt Disney World. Such a cool little hidden Easter egg, and it's good to know that even if it's roped off, which it often is, because, you know, sometimes accidents happen in there, or spills, or kids hit their head, if you have long enough arms and a wide enough lens, you can still kind of get a peek at it. I actually did it with my iPhone just to see if you could. And you can, it's way up above the door on the wood in there. Anyway, like I said about the Nautilus and the Little Mermaid line, these are now oldies but goodies. In fact, that was 99. That was 25 years ago they added this hidden Nautilus, but there's one, or I should say one more hidden kind of Nautilus reference, or Nautilus related reference, that I never hear anyone talking about. Those other two are sort of common, but we gotta go around here, back behind the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train again, back over here, over to the entrance of Ariel's Grotto, where we're gonna turn around and look at this big, ugly DVC sales building over here, which also includes this little turkey leg snack bar I almost never noticed, which apparently is called Prince Eric's Village Market. And another little neat feature no one ever talks about over on this door, King Triton's trident-shaped hinges, which is pretty neat. Actually, if you're going for details, there's also this, the spot where the drain spouts are nailed to the wall. Our Little Mermaid bra shells. Aww. Oh yeah, and then this building also has this in the center, the Seafarer's wood carving area, a little mock-up wood carver's hut. Which, as a wood carver now, I find very interesting. You got all kinds of chisels and gouges and blocks of wood. Man, if you unlock this stuff, I could build a tiki in here. Clamps, mallets, files, you got it all. Okay, that's neat. That's neat for me, but the real treasure is over here on the left side of this building, the DVC area, which is themed, if you couldn't tell by the map and the case full of rolled up maps, which is themed as the cartographer's office. And this is where we get our deepest cut, our coolest Nautilus reference in the park, because up on that sign, read it, it says H. Goff Cartography, and that H right there stands for Harper. Harper Goff, one of Walt Disney's earliest Imagineers. Harper Goff was a legendary Disney artist, originally hired, I believe, to kind of work on storyboards for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the live-action film version, but who then ended up doing all the design sketches and designing the Nautilus from that film, which means he also designed the look of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride vehicle here at Walt Disney World. So that's one reason they've included this epic deep cut hidden reference to Harper Goff over here. The other has got to do with the cartography itself, because Harper Goff drew the first ever maps, the concept maps, for Disneyland. Whoa, wait a minute, Ultra Disney history nerds will say, I thought it was Herb Ryman who drew the first map of Disneyland, and you are correct. Sort of, because long before Herb Ryman drew out what would eventually become Disneyland as we know it today in Anaheim, California, all the way back in 1951, Harper Goff was drawing concept maps for Walt Disney's original idea Mickey Mouse Park, which would have been a much smaller, much more lame version of Disneyland, which was located right across the street from the Walt Disney Studios on this little strip of land between what's now the freeway and the studio. Would have been called Mickey Mouse Park, and you know what? The city, the county, all the authorities that would be weren't that interested, and not only that, it was really too small to get most of Walt Disney's ideas kind of built and fully fleshed out, so eventually they moved down south and looked for a bigger plot of land in Anaheim, and that's what became Disneyland. So Harper Goff drew the concept for the first concept that would become Disneyland, that would lead to the Magic Kingdom, that would lead to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which had the Nautilus, which he already designed. You see where I'm going. So it may seem like a benign little name right there on a sign for a DVC sales pitch little nook is actually an epic nod not only to a Disney artist and legend, but also to the Nautilus's creator, so to the Nautilus, and to theme park history. Now come on, that is an epic Magic Kingdom secret. It ties in with Disneyland, ties in with the Nautilus, ties in with all kinds of stuff. It doesn't burst anybody's bubble or ruin any cherished illusions, just a nice, solid Disney secret for you. Okay, we got one more thing to cover. And this one might be hard to swallow for some people, and it kind of relates to the #1 Magic Kingdom / Disney World secret that people bring up if they're thinking of secrets. And yes, it involves the trash cans. All right, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say guaranteed the #1 most popular, most commonly reported Disney fact, Disney secret about the Magic Kingdom is that this castle here is not actually sitting on the ground, but is in fact up on the 2nd floor. And furthermore, beneath our very feet, not just up here in Fantasyland, but stretching all the way down to Main Street, USA, and out to either side, there are tunnels, secret tunnels stretching this way and that. Well, real quick, that is of course 100% true. Now the story goes that this was actually Walt Disney's idea, because back at the original Disneyland, he would sometimes see cowboys from Frontierland over in the break area in Tomorrowland, the world of the future, and vice versa. You'd see all kinds of different characters from different lands crossing over as they made their way to or from work, which was pretty thematically inconsistent. And you would also see all kinds of bins and rolly things from cast members coming to empty the trash or bring new stock to the stores on Main Street, or bring supplies to the hot dog carts or the food carts, and they would have to carry these things all the way across the old original Disneyland. So when they decided to build their bigger and better Disneyland here in Florida, first, before they did anything else, they laid down a series of roadways or passageways on the ground level, then built up all the dirt around it and built the Magic Kingdom right on top, which meant that all those pathways and offices and buildings that they built on the ground floor now ended up as tunnels and underground lairs. Now these tunnels are still here, and they're called Utilidors. They run all over the park, much farther than most people think. In fact, here's a publicly shared picture of the Utilidors. I'm not going to post any pictures you're not supposed to see, but Disney shared this photo themselves of the Utilidors, so you get a sense of kind of what they looked like, or they did look like back in the day. Now, I don't know where the true dead end of the Utilidors is, because I've never been all the way through them, but I know it stretches at least from the Country Bear Jamboree over here, and I mean literally underneath it. How do you think they work on the Bear Band when they go underground like that? There's a huge Utilidor area down there. They stretch from here at least all the way to Tomorrowland, to that whole entrance cluster of buildings, and then from the castle and underneath Fantasyland all the way down the shops of Main Street, USA. And yes, I have been in them. I'm not going to tell you how, why, when, or how many times, but actually almost anyone can get in them, because they offer these keys to the kingdom and various other backstage tours at Walt Disney World, and oftentimes those tours will take you down through a section of the Utilidors. Now the whole idea behind having those tunnels is that you could move merchandise down there, overstock, dead stock, trash, and of course originally the idea was to move cast members down there, so if you were working here in Frontierland and going on your break, you wouldn't have to roll through Adventureland in your cowboy costume to get to some sort of backstage area. You could simply slip down one of the many hidden staircases behind the shops, which by the way, handy place to keep the stock room downstairs, so you can use the full upstairs space for your shop.
And slip quietly back through the Utilidors to the area behind the castle, back in Fantasyland, where the cast members board a bus to their parking lot.
Now, I'm surprised that this is still a surprise to so many people.
Because Disney themselves used to be quite proud of telling everybody about the invention of the Utilidors and what a convenient, cool system it was for moving people and products and stuff around down below instead of up on the surface through all of the guests and crowds at Magic Kingdom. In fact, Walt himself used to love showing the behind-the-scenes technology of the Tiki Room, the Haunted Mansion, things like that on his television specials.
But I guess over the years, after they lost Walt and then they lost Roy, they lost the faces of the company. I guess the attitude sort of changed because they became much more mysterious and tight-lipped about how they would do things behind the scenes.
And where in the early days of promotion for Walt Disney World, you used to see pictures and stuff of the Utilidors and things. They've gotten more and more scarce. You rarely hear of them now, and they've become the stuff of legend and urban legend, in fact.
Oh yeah, they're down there. They're underneath our feet right now. They've been underneath our feet all throughout the park.
Although I guess technically they're not actually tunnels, given that they were built on ground level and everything else was built above them. They're pretty much tunnels. The kind of most extensive set of them runs between Main Street, well, underneath Main Street USA and behind all these cool stores, and then all the way up there back behind the castle where there's costuming, there's all kinds of offices down there.
And of course, people are always talking about them, always talking about, man, how can you get in those secret tunnels? They're not really secret. Now let me tell you, you kind of don't want to go down there. They smell weird, they're kind of dark, and I mean, they're not really claustrophobic. Some of them are wide. You got people driving vehicles down there and golf carts and whatnot.
It's a very practical and innovative system.
And more importantly, I mentioned smell. The reason it smells down there is because they have these pipes of suction pipes where they move trash through a whole system and suck the trash along these pipes to various points where they can dispose of it.
It's called the Automated Vacuum Collection System, and it has 17 collection points around the Magic Kingdom where the trash goes in and then gets sucked through these pipes, through these vacuum tubes, all the way behind what was Splash Mountain to a trash compressor, compactor,
where it then gets hauled away in trucks and taken, I presume, to the dump. I have no idea. Maybe to a recycling center, who knows?
Again, another cool, handy system, very innovative for the time. I believe it was developed in Europe, I think in Sweden back in the 1970s. New York City has got a similar system in place in various parts of Manhattan now, based actually off the Disney World system. It is a much easier method of collecting the trash to one central point than having to take it everywhere in carts or little golf carts or having people carry the bags or whatever. And you can actually, or you could actually at least see these trash tubes on the Keys to the Kingdom tour, a paid VIP tour, like I said, that takes you behind the scenes, where you do go down into the Utilidors. Now, the strange thing is that another Disney secret has come out of this trash system, or the AVAC system, as I believe it's officially known. And this might be one of those things that started as rumors that, like, hey, you know, I got a cousin here, and he told me that all the trash gets sucked away by tubes, and, you know, then it passed by word of mouth, as sort of a playing telephone type of thing. Or more likely, it might be people misunderstanding what they hear and see on the Keys to the Kingdom tour, or on a guided VIP tour with the plaids. But weirdly, this strange rumor began to grow up, especially during the internet age, that the trash cans on Main Street are somehow connected to the Utilidors and to the AVAC system. So you can literally go online, even today, and there are articles and blogs and Reddit posts and all that kind of stuff where people will say that the suction tubes actually reach up underneath the trash cans, and when you throw your trash in, they go straight down into those tubes and get sucked away. Well, if only all the poor sweepers and janitors would have a lot less work to do. Unfortunately, that rumor is not true at all. There are, in fact, bags in each one of these trash cans. These are just metal shells. Inside the metal shells, you actually have a physical trash can and bag. You can look for yourself. The AVAC system is real. The trash compactor is real. I've seen it, but there are no tubes reaching up into individual trash cans at the Magic Kingdom. And if you want proof, just go to any trash can and tilt it back. Or simply open the little door. Look, this one's already open. You can see the trash can right in there.
Now, the Utilidors don't run under every part of Magic Kingdom. As they expanded Fantasyland or they expanded Tomorrowland by building, you know, Space Mountain and things like that, they didn't expand the original Utilidor system. I don't know why, just like the monorails, why not keep expanding? Maybe the cost, maybe the expense, the bean counters didn't think it was worth it.
So some people say, oh, well, you're just not tilting back the right trash cans. There are some trash cans that suck away the trash. I guarantee you,
on the authority of people who work here who would definitely know that there are no regular public trash cans like that lead straight into the system. Like I said,
there are 17 collection points, but they are all backstage, and every 15 minutes the tube sucks the trash away to the central area where they go to the trash compactor, they get compacted, they get thrown into trucks. But as for the actual trash cans themselves, nope, it's the hard-working, unsung heroes of the park, the cast members, who've got to empty those bags of trash that we all throw away here at the Magic Kingdom and then get them to those collection points and make sure that we never have to smell an uncomfortable smell again.
The same can't be said of the restrooms, but at least out here anyways, I don't smell any trash at all. I don't even see any trash. Except me.
Now, I had actually heard a different form of this rumor before. I had heard that the trash cans were connected to tubes that took the trash down, you know, through a hole in the ground, and then they would go to the collection points or something like that. And I found out for sure that wasn't true when I was here for a hurricane at Walt Disney World. They closed the park early, and they were actually moving all the trash cans backstage, apparently so they wouldn't fly through the air and break anything if the storm got really bad.
And never once did I see anything more unusual underneath the trash cans when they moved them than a stain or two, you know?
So if you ever have heard that rumor, or if you ever overhear anyone saying that rumor that the trash goes straight down under the ground into suction tubes, you can tell them, well, that's not quite the thing. And then tell them that Disney World secret is actually a Disney World rumor, and it's based on fact, just a little bit twisted around.
All right, we've busted some myths. We've talked about the most popular Disney secret, which is the tunnels under Magic Kingdom. They are real.
We've uncovered a little hidden history in terms of the Nautilus stuff, some Easter eggs, some sort of hidden secrets at the park.
Weird things, hidden references. I think we've done a lot today.
There's a lot packed into each episode of Random Land, and don't you worry, friends, there are more episodes coming your way soon. We just filmed 2 of the most epic, private, exclusive suites at Walt Disney World Resort properties. Go and check those videos out. And of course, we have 11 years worth of other videos at the Magic Kingdom, down Route 66, Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, and beyond and beyond and beyond. So do me a favor, throw me one of those thumbs up. Tell me who's boss. Make sure you're subscribed, or that you're still subscribed, and click that notification bell. Check in occasionally, because we have all kinds of new episodes coming out all the time.
Keep in touch with me via the links below. There's social media. We've got Patreon, all kinds of other things. I want to know what your favorite Magic Kingdom secrets are. I want to know what your favorite weird, unusual things at the parks are.
Having looked at all this stuff, and having said all that just now, I think for now, we've done our duty. And that means it's time to go home and sleep well.
See you next time.
Boy, that guy was really weird.
What'd you say? Thought it sounded like you said I was a little weird.
Oh, no, I said I want a beer. My voice is a little hoarse.
Your voice was hoarse. Seriously, what the heck with this freaking Mickey?
Hi, Mickey. Come inside. Let me eat you. Eat my popcorn.
Rumor grew up, but weirdly, this strange rumor began to grow up, especially in the internet. But weirdly, this strange rumor began to grow up, especially during the internet age, that the trust is... Oh my gosh.
Look how many people are enjoying the land of liberty.
Would be a fetid...
Fetid. Oh my gosh, look. I bet they've got Harrison Ford in there.
They're taking him to film another Star Wars. Stop it. He doesn't want to film any more Star Wars. Let Harrison go.